Hi, ladies. Welcome again to Women in Community. This month we're talking about the ripple effect, and I really can't wait to hear what my dear friend Laura has to say about it.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, so we're talking about the ripple effect, and it was largely sort of started up as we were talking about mentoring.
Yeah.
And how you can pour your life into basically one or two people, 3, 4, 5 people,
Yeah.
and that will, of course, hopefully spread, right?
Right.
And eventually affect a lot of people. And I think about Jesus and how he spoke to the large crowds,
Yeah.
but he also spent the most of his time pouring into the 12 disciples and, a small group of women and men that traveled with him. And so when he was having those heart-to-hearts and really talking about life and how things were going to change in the future, that's who he talked to.
Yes.
And out from that, of course, the whole world,
Right.
this message has reached the whole world.
Right.
And so as we were talking about the ripple effect, I was just really kind of picturing what happens, when you throw a stone into a pond and that ripple expands, right? And the one thing a ripple doesn't do is it doesn't come back. It doesn't go back.
That's a great point.
Unless it meets opposition.
That's a great point. Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, even with the ocean, with those big, strong, powerful waves,
Right.
if they're big enough, they'll crash up over those rocks, like I think of the Pacific coast.
Yeah.
And they'll come right up on the shore because the force is just so strong. But that would be the only thing that would turn something back, is if a ripple were to meet opposition.
Yeah. Right.
And so, once God has put something in our heart
Yeah.
and really given us a way to go, something to do, put something on our heart, we have to keep moving forward. Paul said, I keep moving forward, I press forward, and that takes intention.
It does.
It takes some grit and it takes some guts.
Oh, I like the word
to
grit.
Continue. I do too,
Yeah, that really says it.
It takes a lot. And about a year ago, the Holy Spirit gave me this image. It's sort of funny, of an old pair of jeans. Because I had this pair of jeans that I loved.
Don't
and
we
when
all?
Oh, yeah. For some people, I think it's sweats or like some comfy yoga pants. But for me, it was this really nice, comfy pair of jeans. And they were super broken in. And when I needed a break and I just wanted to be cozy, that's what I pulled on.
Yeah.
And, then he kind of gave me this image of this new pair of jeans that I had bought. And when I got them, I was really excited. They were kind of like on trend. I was really pumped to put them on. And then I did, and I loved them for a few weeks. But, you have a rough day. You don't want to put on the fancy new jeans.
Right.
You want to put on those comfy pants,
Wow,
and
yeah.
be really comfortable. And, sometimes when there's a new season that comes in our lives, we have to keep pressing forward. We want to kind of shrink back when things are tough, when there's some opposition to the direction we're going.
Yes.
And we want to kind of shrink back, but Paul said, I press forward. I continue moving forward. And, I think about Paul in Philippians, in his letter to the Philippians. In chapter 3, he was talking about just being consumed with Jesus, consumed with being one with him, consumed with knowing the power of his resurrection. And he said he couldn't focus on his own strength to keep moving forward in that. And in verse 13, he said, I have one compelling focus. I forget all of the past as I fasten my heart to the future instead. He fastened his heart to that forward progression and moving forward. He put his eyes intentionally off of the past,
Yes.
and he pressed on. I think of the children of Israel.
Yeah.
God breaks them free in this grand display of power. I mean, we're talking about 12 plagues. The river turns to blood, the locusts. Then he splits the Red Sea wide open, destroys Pharaoh's army. They get on the other side, and I'm sure there was this massive celebration.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, here's what it says. There in Egypt, in slavery, we sat around pots filled with meat, and we ate all the bread we wanted. But now you have brought us into this wilderness to starve us all to death.
Wow.
Can you imagine the forward progression that they had? And they were going and doing, ultimately, God was paving a way for the deliverer, for Jesus to come into the world and freeing his people to continue that on. And they sort of in their minds were like, yeah, but back then, the comfy pants. We're scared of this new future. We're scared of where we're going. Even though God says he would lead us and he'll direct us and he'll move us forward, we're scared and we want to go back to old and comfortable.
Yes, yes. Change is uncomfortable.
Change is uncomfortable. They went back to that old mentality. In the book of Hebrews, we see sort of a similar phenomena taking place. And many Bible scholars believe that it was written to a group of converted Jews.
Yes.
Right? Which makes a lot of sense based on the context and the content. And this group of Jews were sort of worried. They were thinking, maybe we'll go back to the old way of doing things. And so maybe over the last year or two, or even longer, you know, God put something in your heart and he said, this is the way, this is the direction the ripple's going, right?
Yes.
And maybe, you know, you felt the drawing of God to start a small group,
right.
a ministry, to mentor someone in your life. And maybe you started to see those ripples moving outward and maybe you got tired. Maybe you ran into some opposition. Maybe the old sweats start calling your name. You're like, this is too much. I don't know if I can do this. And those sweats will give you really good reasons to put them on. You know, you'll justify.
This is so true.
And it will be time. It will be resources. It will be, and sometimes there are real things that you're going to have to work through. You know, a real boulder that ripple's coming up against.
That's true.
And so I want to read you a couple of things that were written to the Hebrews, in the book of Hebrews, about these converted Jews who were worried about going back. And so in chapter 11, you know, of course, he starts about talking the heroes of faith.
Yeah.
And in 13b, it says, they all lived their lives on earth, talking about the heroes of faith, as those who belong to another realm. For clearly those who live this way, following the calling, the word, the direction of God, are longing for the appearing of a heavenly city. And if their hearts were still remembering what they left behind, they would have found an opportunity to go back. But they couldn't turn back, for their hearts were fixed on what was far greater. That is the heavenly realm.
Wow.
They were fixed on the future. They were fixed on where they were going. So then again in Hebrews 10:23-25, and this is out of the Passion Translation, I want to encourage you with this. He said so, or she, we don't know who wrote that.
No,
Some people think it was Phoebe, right?
Yes, some people think it was Phoebe.
That was extra. So now, he says, wrap your heart tightly around the hope that lives within, knowing that God always keeps his promises. Discover creative ways to encourage others and to motivate them toward acts of compassion, doing beautiful works as expressions of love. This is not the time to pull away and neglect meeting together.
No.
As some have formed the habit of doing. In fact, we should come together even more frequently, eager to encourage and urge each other onward as we anticipate that day dawning.
Wow.
And don't we need one another?
Don't we?
As we move forward with what God's put on our hearts. Because remember, a ripple doesn't come back unless it meets opposition.
Yeah.
So don't let opposition stop you. Move forward, reach the people that you're called to reach. We have to keep our eyes fixed on the heavenly realm, our hearts fastened to the future, wrapped tightly around the hope of freedom that lives within us. We've got too much to do. We must move forward.